Welcome to the Self-Reliant Living Show, where we talk all about a self-reliant lifestyle to save money, live greener, eat healthier, and be prepared for anything so you can take care of the ones you love in good times and bad. I'm your host, Jennifer Osech, a homeschooling mom of 3 boys. I'm the author of the Preparedness Planner series, and my husband and I are the lead teachers of Self-Reliant School, a website dedicated to giving you the skills and confidence to take care of yourself and your community. Be sure to stop by and pick up your free videos from inside Self-Reliant School that will get you started growing, cooking, and preserving your own food today. You can pick these up at selfreliantschool.com/free. Now, on with the show. Welcome to the Self-Reliant Living Show. Okay, so I am going to introduce our guest. I'm going to say hello to a couple more people. Hello, Karen. Yeah, she says that the audio is better now, so yay. I'm going to introduce our guest, and as you know, I like to read their bios because I don't want to leave anything out at all, and we have a really, really special guest this week. We have Tammy Trayer from Trayer Wilderness. Okay, so Tammy is an author, a freelance writer, a web designer, programmer, and a radio show host at Mountain Woman Radio. So she's got her own podcast. Tammy and her family live traditionally off-grid and have a passion to help educate others by sharing their experience of living off the land and dealing with autism, gluten-free and dairy-free cooking, self-reliance, wilderness survival, traditional and primitive skills, and much more. Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Okay, so I'm going to say one more time for those of you who are joining us that Tammy is, she's joining us from her home, and she has a remote location. So there may be a little bit of a delay, but I'm going to monitor the comments. And so far we've been testing a little bit and there has not been a delay. So hopefully our luck will hold and we'll be able to hear Tammy just fine throughout this interview, but I did want to let you know that she's in a remote location and to please be patient with us. Okay, so for those that don't know you, could you explain a little bit about your website and your mission?
Yes, absolutely. We embraced this off-grid lifestyle in 2010, just looking for a more wholesome life in this crazy world. And our website really started as a fluke. Our website, because I'm a web designer, was started to keep our family back east in Pennsylvania, abreast of our building, and knowing that we were still alive was really the purpose of our website. However, once we put it out there and started really sharing what we were doing, we ended up with a very large audience. So it just kind of morphed into something that we really love because we are sharing our lifestyle, sharing our passions, and helping to educate others to embrace and have the freedoms that we have. So embrace the lifestyle of off-grid living, simple living, homesteading, and just kind of trying to help inspire people to slow down and smell the roses a little bit while you're actually living your life instead of trying to chase it. So
yes,
that's a little.
I love that. Before I ask you this next question, I just want to share a story, because when I was first introduced to you through your podcast, and I remember listening. I'm not sure if it was the first one, but it was one of 1 or 2, maybe 3, and I was listening to it. I was doing some research at the time, and it was a while ago. It just came out, so it was a while ago. And I was tired. It was the end of the day, and I thought, oh gosh, I have this one more podcast to listen to, and I started listening to it. And the thing was, it was so strange because it was, I had this feeling, that it was going to be this, another story, just like I said, I had been tired at the end of the day, and you came on and you were describing how you built your home, your house actually, and it was in such a matter-of-fact way. It wasn't in any grandiose or any I mean, you had some excitement, I guess, that you were done with it and everything, but there wasn't any frills, I guess I want to say, in your voice. And it was something that you were describing just matter of factly, and was so intriguing the way that you were telling the story. And, it was one of those things where I just couldn't stop listening. And it was that fascinating to me. It really was. It was wonderful. So if you guys have not heard those early podcasts, please go back and listen to those, because they are wonderful, and it will give you a real sense of Tammy and how she has, how far she's come over the years. So with that said, let me ask you about, your story and how you became totally off-grid.
Well, my husband and I grew up on farms in Pennsylvania. We were both born and raised in Pennsylvania. He traveled all over the place. He was a professional bull rider. He was a professional guide. He took pack trips back into the backcountry. So he'd seen a lot of places. I was a Pennsylvaniite, a bumpkin. I didn't go very far, but I loved the simple life, and we both grew up in the woods. We both have a passion for the outdoors that is beyond anything. And it's just such a thrill for us. So we were also thrill seekers. So when we met and collided, it was pretty dangerous, because we don't view anything as impossible. So, and he's crazier than I am. I mean, he climbs through trees and like a monkey. I mean, he's very gutsy. And that has provided us with a really exciting life. And for our son, it was really wild for him too, because with autism, a lot of children are reserved, but my son has always looked to me for his comfort. So if I was excited about it, he was excited about it as well. And being that I'm excited about everything and always kind of see everything through the pink shady glasses and looking for the shiny penny, it made things really exciting for us. And when my husband and I met, I was living on a 150-acre farm in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania too. I had a 1.5 mile long lane, and I was just nestled down in a mountain range, and it was beautiful. But I wanted to raise my son in the woods, in a cabin, and I like that seclusion. It's not that I don't like people. I am a people person, but I love the seclusion. I love the freedom. I love that comfort of my home and our privacy, and it's just really awesome. And even back then, I mean, I know when I say this, a lot of people are like, well, what do you mean things are falling apart? But in 2010 or even in 2008, you could see, things just not looking very bright. And we wanted to be able to be in a place that we could sustain ourselves and be free and kind of separate from the rest of the world. And we just decided to embrace it. Everybody thought we were nuts. People in our hometowns were betting on us, and but here we are, it's 7 years later, and we're living our dream. We are very happy with what we have accomplished, and quite honestly would love to even go further back in. We're in, but we're not near back in the way we would like to be. 100 miles in the middle of Alaska sounds really wonderful to both of us. And our son likes that idea, but he's a little reserved in that regard because he wants a wife first. So we're supposed to wait a little longer.
That's great. Okay, so hello, Stuart. Hi, Kathy. They're joining us. Okay, so about this being off-grid. Okay, so tell me one thing that was easier than you thought it would be going off-grid, and then one thing that you thought it was going to be easy, but you found it was a little bit harder. So give us a sense of this off-gridness.
We are so unlike other people that I cannot really give you an answer to that, because we run into adversity all the time. And some people that really stunts them. They don't continue, they quit, they give up. When we run into adversity and when we have struggles, we just embrace it and just slam into it and keep going. So when we look back and when we look at things, those struggles don't look near like struggles, because we pushed through them, accomplished them, and made through. We also grew up in ways that we had a lot of the skills before we got here. So And just to give you an example, before I met my husband, I had a bird dog that I was training in the Pennsylvania wilderness. And I went back in 10 miles back in by myself with the dog and camped for the night after I trained him for the day. So being in that seclusion and being with dirt under my feet and camping in the woods and being surrounded by bugs and, that stuff, it never really tainted me. It wasn't something that was a struggle for me. So other women may have struggles with going from your cushy home with powered lights and running water into an 8-foot by 14-foot canvas wall tent with dirt under your feet, animals snorting outside your tent, maybe 10 feet away from you, so it's perspective. I really feel that life itself is perspective, how you look at things. So that was not hard for me, but I could see that being hard for other people. It's just that that's how Glenn and I grew up, and that's how Glenn and I enjoy life. When we get a chance to go on vacation, he and I hit the woods for 4 or 5 days with a pack on our back, and that's all we have. We don't have a shelter, we build one. We don't necessarily have a lot of food, we find it. So, and that was what we did before we even embraced this lifestyle. So that's a hard question to answer, and I've been asked it many times, and I don't see anything that was really hard for us, other than just maybe, I guess the best answer I could give to that was we were building our home into December. We're still living in a wall tent with a foot of snow on the ground. So the days working in the cold and the numb feet and that got a little hard toward the end, bouncing eggs off of a frying pan because they were frozen, and having to put food under a wood stove so that it would thaw so that you could actually make something. That was a little bit of a struggle, but even so, I would do that again in a heartbeat.
Wow.
It's just a passionate time. I don't even, it was a romantic time. I don't even know how to explain it. It was just awesome. And
Wow. That's amazing. It's, I just can't even, and I love the fact that you're saying that it's a perspective and that you kind of prepared for it almost, your entire life, or certainly before you got out there, that you had, you had taken vacations in the wilderness and you knew what to expect and all of that. So I feel like that's a really big advantage you guys had, is you knew what was there, so nothing really surprised you. And then even the little things that did, you looked at it as a challenge rather than, something that was blocking your way to go forward. So that's just, it's wonderful to have, to talk to somebody who has that positive outlook on life. I think that just, it makes such a difference to the things that you can accomplish, is the way you look at things, like you were saying, perspective. If you were just joining us, and I see some people have, hi Patty, hi Pamela, hi Daniela. Tammy is at her homestead, and it is in a remote location, so there may be a little bit of a delay when she's talking to us, but if you would just bear with us, because the things that she has to share are so very wonderful, and I wouldn't want you to miss any of them. Okay, so here's another question that I wanted to ask you about. It was also, of course, being off-grid, but it's just kind of an amazing thing to me, at least these days. But your husband and you built your house without like electrical tools. I mean, without things that you could plug in. And so tell us about that. And, was there a decision when you got there, we're just not going to plug into the grid? Does it not run out there? Did you just make that, something that was a non-negotiable? How did that play out in terms of, hey, I'm going to build this house and it's just going to be with hand tools?
Well, actually, what we did is we built our guest cabin with just hand tools. Our home itself, we did use power tools because of its size, and we used a generator. But we were very deliberate about not using it more than we had to, and we did all the work ourselves. The only thing that we did not do on our homestead was set the septic tank. We had somebody come and set that and drill the well. Other than that, everything we did here, we did ourselves. Glenn has been involved in construction his whole life, well, a good portion of his life. And he actually has his own business, Trayer Construction, and we also are starting to do a consulting side of things where we are helping other people to go off grid. That will be starting up with the release of my book, that we will be consulting to help other people that have questions on how to set things up, the best way to set things up. But as far as doing the hand tools on our guest cabin, I will explain that because we were under a deadline with our home. Well, we were under a deadline with our cabin too. Our guest cabin, we felled the trees, milled the logs, and built the cabin in 4.5 weeks because we had guests coming, and we were actually sweeping the dirt out of the cabin and putting the door on. They were doing that while we were picking them up at the airport. So talk about pushing the limits. But we wanted to do that with all of the traditional hand tools that we had. We have a lot of our grandfathers and great-grandfathers' tools. And in all honesty, if it weren't for the fact that we had to be attached to the internet for my web design business and my writing business and our educating, that all of our technology would be heaped in the woods, and we would be living completely traditionally by choice, because it's just, we feel like we were born 200 years too late. So it is passion to live that way for us. And when we embrace things again in spring, we will be building ourselves another log cabin in that fashion, and we will be taking everybody along on this journey. Last time it was just basically our family that we were taking along on the journey. All of our stuff is still out there, but it wasn't something that we were doing publicly. But with everybody that we have following us, we are in a situation that my medical bills are not being paid, and we are forced to sell our property and start again. So we are going to do it from the ground up on another piece of raw land and embrace it again, just because this is the way we have to live. I could not ever go back.
Wow. That's, gosh, that was a lot of information. And so you're starting like a consulting business, or tell us a little bit about that. And because that's kind of my next question, as to, since you do live so remotely, what do you guys do for a living in terms of getting money for the stuff that you can't produce yourself? So explain that a little bit.
Sure, I'll kind of combine them together. What we are doing out here is doing everything in our power to work from our home. Right now, today, the mountain man is out working on a construction job with his business, remodeling a bathroom for a woman. And that kind of had to be embraced because of my illness. I got very sick last fall, and in January had life-saving surgery, and I could not do what I was doing to keep us afloat anymore. So he embraced his construction business and has been doing that this year. We also handcraft a lot of things. He makes leather things. He's a blacksmith, so he makes all kinds of very unique, decorative as well as useful things on the forge. Our son makes elk hide moccasins and paracord survival equipment, and I have made soap and candles, and we sell all those things on our website. I have written my cookbook last year, and I will be releasing, and I'm so excited to release this. My new book is coming out in the next 2 weeks, and that is on how to embrace an off-grid lifestyle, which shares our journey, and also a step-by-step look at every aspect of the lifestyle, so that people wanting to embrace it have that opportunity to really get a good feel and have some guidance. The consulting business is something that we've decided to do because we get a lot of people asking us how we do this and how we do that. And when we were starting out, you know, there was a lot of aspects of things that we had already known, where there's other people that they don't know those skills, don't know. Some people aren't as mechanically inclined as he is. He is my MacGyver who can make a pistol out of a paperclip. Wow. So, you know, but there's other people that don't have that gift. We all are gifted in different ways. So it's not that you're lesser capable, it's just that you don't have those same gifts. So that's why we wanted to start this and be able to Skype with people or email with people, phone call with people. You know, there'll be different options to help them set up their homestead. There's different ways with an off-grid homestead that you can set things up that will make it better and more efficient for you, as well as save you money And that's what we're about. We're trying to live debt-free and trying to embrace a life that we choose to live, you know, and I know there's so many other people out there wanting to do it, and there's no reason why anybody can't live this life. It might take some adjusting, but anybody can embrace this. Some people just might need some extra guidance, and that's what we figured we would be able to offer by doing this. And then we also have our Trayer Wilderness Academy coming, which will be, the purpose of setting it up is so that we have a community of like-minded people, and we will be sharing in detail everything that's in my book for hands-on videos and ways to do everything that we discuss in the book, and really expand on that, and just be able to help people and grow. So that's some of the things we do to make a living. We try very hard not to have to leave our homestead if we don't have to, because it's so comforting. And so it's a little hard for the mountain man to be going out, but it's temporary, we're hoping, and we're hoping that we can you know, really build an online business much better and be able to help people better that way.
Well, that's wonderful. I can't wait for that. Sign me up, because I will be right there. I would love to learn all of that stuff. And so let's see. Patty says that positive is Tammy's biggest trait, and so I think so too.
Love you, Patty.
Let's see. Okay, and so the next question I have is changing gears just a little bit, but it's, you know, some stuff that happened recently, and you know, I've heard these stories, but I want you to tell everybody, you know, exactly what happened, because it's just, well, they're good stories, there's that, but then also they're educational too, with how to handle emergencies in terms of living remotely, because you had some pretty good scares. So could you tell us basically what you guys have set up in terms of a protocol, and well, first of all, what happened, because now we all want to know, right? And then the protocols that you had in place, and then, you know, how you guys dealt with that, and then you know, maybe some kind of tidbits about how you could go, if you don't have an emergency plan, how you could go and set one up.
Absolutely. It's really important. When we were building our home, the mountain man ended up tar papering our roof by the light of a headlamp on the moon, because a storm was coming. And our roof was large, so it was really a grueling project. And he had just finished it, and we had face boards up that were catching the steel that he was putting in place. And he was taking all that down, and he was had just removed the last nail that was holding the ladder in place when the ladder went. And this was 7 years ago, but there's reason I'm telling you this. The ladder started to go, and being a bull rider and being in construction, for one, he knows how to fall gracefully. I got to give him that. And second, he knew not to get tangled in being in construction. People die. They break their backs, they break their neck. So he knew to jump away from the ladder. So that's what he did. He jumped 16 feet off of a ladder. And I was actually back in our mess tent grading Austin's schoolwork, and it was the weirdest feeling. Our faith leads the way, and, you know, so I don't mean to offend anybody by mentioning this, but it's very dominant in our lives. And I was standing back there, and something just came over me, and I just threw everything and started running. I had no idea why I was even running. And I hit the corner of our house when he hit the ground. And as I was running, I could hear him yell. Mm. And when I got around the corner, thankfully he was conscious, because he kept yelling at me while he was working on the roof, because I kept watching him. He's like, "What, are you going to watch me fall?" And I was always so concerned that if he'd fall and I didn't see it, and I'd find him, he'd be unconscious, I wouldn't know how to care for him. Well, he was conscious, but the boards he took off of the roof had blunt screws sticking up, and there was one on either side of his thighs, both legs. They were spaced. I mean, it was divine intervention by all means. And he was laying there. He wasn't hurt. He had caught his one foot on the bottom rung, and it jarred his left foot into the ground. So we did go to the ER to just get it checked. He did some nerve damage, but he wasn't hurt, and it was by the grace of God. And next to him laid an 8-foot piece of steel that was pointed at the end that we were using to nail or to hammer the holes into our steel so he could put the screws in up on the roof. And I was doing that on the ground, but occasionally he had to adjust a hole or something. That was laying 6 inches from his side. I just picked it up, I threw it across the yard, and I'm a tough cracker, but I cried. That could have ended so differently, and that it was the precursor for a protocol. And at that point, we got something called Life Flight, which is a helicopter that comes in and lands close by and is able to get people like us out faster. Now, this year has been a character building year for us. We have had so much, and I mean, either lesser people would drink or throw in the towel at this point. I mean, it's been a headbanger. We've had health issues for me, and he ended up needing to go to the ER in April. And it wasn't just a little casual thing. He actually stopped breathing 8 times before the ambulance arrived, and it was really scary. But I have to say, it was concerning to me at points that I was so calm. You know, it almost made me feel like was a part of me that didn't care. And I've come to learn that through this year, it's not that I don't care. It's not that I don't have any feelings left in my body. It's that I have such strong faith that I know that I don't even react in a negative way. I just keep doing what I've got to do. And that's what we did that day. I've played it through my head so many times after him falling off that ladder of what we would do. We've discussed it. We knew our property is gated in by the state of Idaho. So for one, an ambulance couldn't even get back here without that gate being open because nobody has a key. So my son, who is autistic, he is high functioning autistic, but he has overcome so much with our lifestyle. He drives, and he drove out there and he opened the gate. We were a little concerned with him just being worked up, and he burned out of the driveway a little bit, but he calmed himself down and went out, opened the gate, came back. We put dogs away into the bathroom so they didn't go after the emergency people because they're protectors. So I had to keep rattling him to keep him breathing and to keep him awake. What happened is he took valerian root, which is an herb. We are very big into herbal medicines and natural things, and he took that to sleep. However, he chewed it. They were tablets, and he chewed it, and what happened is it caused his body to absorb the outer coating and the active ingredients way too fast, and it caused the part of his brain that tells you to breathe to stop working. So it was very alarming. Had he not chewed them, he would have been fine, but he chewed them, and he does weird things like that on occasion. He's used to paint, like he takes aspirin the same way. So anyway, it was just a fluke thing, and it was alarming because we don't have a landline, so I can't dial 911. And I called the sheriff's office, and I got that lovely sound that tells you that the phone number is non-existent. However, I was dialing their number. That's a local phone number problem, a phone problem, and that's not, so that was just fluke also. But what do you do next? So I tried that 3 times with no success. So I called a friend of ours and asked him to please call 911. Hung up with him. He called 911, but they didn't have enough information. And another friend of mine heard it on the scanner, and she started Facebook messaging me. So I'm rattling him. My friend was here, Rhonda from the Farmer's Lamp. So she was rattling him as well. And I'm saying rattling him. We were shaking him and trying to keep him breathing, trying to keep him awake. But while we're contending with him, I'm also Facebook messaging on my phone to let the 911 know all the details. And thankfully, the ambulance driver knows us and knew where our home was, because we are located in a weird spot. And to get somebody back here that isn't familiar with the area is tricky. I mean, we usually have to go find people because they've driven around for an hour looking for us. So it was a little alarming, but that was our avenue at that point. We need Life Flight. We were able to get them fast, and they were able to come back, and he was fine. But it definitely adds to the scenario. I mean, we're not just we're not easy to get to. We are locked in. We're gated in. So you have to have something in place. You can't just wait for those things to happen. And living as remotely as we do, the skills we have are important, and to have protocols in place regardless where you are is important. It doesn't matter if you live in town or not. Flukes, weird things happen. An ambulance gets in an accident trying to get to you. You know, you don't know. And the thing is, if you don't know anything, you're in a bad spot. And if you don't have a plan in place, that if something happens to you and your kids and your family don't have the phone numbers for the emergency and people to contact, what's going to happen? So you really need to sit down. This is a family affair. This is something that you need to sit down and discuss as a family, determine what you will do in certain situations. We've also had fire scares. Last year we had our trailer packed down and loaded with everything we would need to rebuild because there were fires 20 minutes from us, and if it started, the winds carried it. We have one way out of here, and we don't have time to play around. The trailer was even pointing in the right direction, so that all we had to do was drive out instead of have to hassle around trying to turn that thing around, a 24-foot gooseneck trailer around in our driveway. So, you know, being prepared and thinking, you know, common sense plays such a big role. And the more you go through these protocols and the more you practice different things, it's ingrained in you. It just becomes instinct. So when that happened, it was just like this for me. And it was really a very calming thing looking back at it. And even while it was happening, the thoughts were crossing my mind that I was just so calm. And that plays a huge role. You've got to be calm when there's crazy chaos going on. You can't be spastic and not, you got to keep it together, and that can be hard for some people, but it's really important because you're not going to be of help to the person that's injured or in need of help, and you're not going to be of help to yourself either. So it's really important. And then we also had another event just last week. Did you want me to share that?
Yeah, if you would. But I just wanted to say, well, I think that you're right about faith, because that has carried me through on many, many occasions. But that you're right, because there is a calmness that comes over you. And I've done not emergencies like that, but the emergencies that I've had, you know, I have been able to do it calmly. And of course I've fallen apart afterwards, but while it was happening, I was calm and, you know, doing what I needed to do. But I wanted to share with everybody, because, you know, we follow you and we're friends and all that. But Bill was on Facebook the other day and he saw your message about the story that you're about to tell. And he came in there and he told me, did you know? And I was like, no, I hadn't seen that. And I said, but it's going to be fine. I just know. I just, you know, I didn't even skip a beat. You know, I just knew it was going to be fine. And it was, but I mean, there was just this feeling I had that, I mean, there was not even a question in my mind. And so anyway, go ahead and tell the story though.
Well, Monday morning, my husband and my father-in-law went out hunting. Now, I was supposed to be on that trip. I decided not to because my immune system is impaired, and it has just been nothing but miserable rain for October, and it would have been really foolish of me to put myself in that position. And that's all my mountain man said to me over and over again when the situation was over, that he was so glad I wasn't on that trip, because I relinquished my seat to my father-in-law so they could have some bonding time. And what they did is they took the canoe and dropped it in the river, and we're elk hunting out of the canoe. That was the intention. Now, most of our hunting is done out here on land, and we have a rule in our home, regardless if it's hunting season or not. If you leave the house, you need to let the rest of the family know where you're going and how long you intend to be gone, so that if something happens, we know where to start looking. So I knew where he was. I knew where he was going to be. And this is something else that plays a role. I feel there is nothing wrong with checking out and being an adventurer and going into new territory. We do it all the time, but typically we do it together. So I was blind from home because I had hiked the railroad tracks that go along the river there for about 6 miles, but he was going in about 17. It was a 17-mile trek. I didn't know the rest of the terrain, so I felt really blind and really out of the loop as far as what he was experiencing, what he was going through, what was in there. But what happened is they left at 6:30 in the morning, dropped the canoe in, and we had got the truck and moved it to another location where they were going to come out of the river. And 8 o'clock rolls around and they're not back. And that, you know, that's no big deal. 8 o'clock, you know, he may have got something at last minute, so they're, you know, toting it out, whatever. Midnight comes around and he's not back, and it was just a very uncomfortable feeling. And I have to say, I'm right there with Jennifer. I never, ever once doubted my man's abilities. He has grown up in the wilderness. He's lived the wilderness, and he, used to do the pack trips back into the backcountry for weeks on end. So his capabilities are incredible. And the sheriff even said that his abilities probably are so much greater than those that would be coming to rescue him, which was a little bit of a nerving feeling at some point. But I didn't know. I was trying not to let the devil on my shoulder, because the unknown was the problem. Water adds a whole lot of new variables: drowning, hypothermia, falling and hitting their heads and becoming unconscious. I didn't know what they were dealing with. So, I really did have a very comfortable feeling that he was okay. But I also knew, and being that my mother-in-law was involved, that I needed to make an effort to do something, just see what the protocols were. So I went out with the dog at midnight and I started driving around. I drove up to where the truck was, and it was, I have to say, the most eerie feeling, seeing that truck sitting there and seeing the river just dead calm and nobody in it. It was really nerving. So I drove up another road that rides along the river, and it's a really rough road, and it goes back in really far, and it's an old logging road, and there's not a lot of cars back there, homes back there. And I didn't want to put myself in a position. That's something else that you got to remember, is when there's, especially at night like that, I knew to be careful, because if I end up putting myself in a situation that I'm lost, or I am impaired in any way, it would be worse and cause more struggles. So I drove back probably about 8-9 miles and was just looking along the river. The river is visible through a good portion of that. So I was looking for headlamps. I was looking for signs of a fire, anything. And I would have just been happy if he yelled up the bank at me and said, "Woman, I'm okay. I'm camping. Go home." And I would have just left and gone home. But that wasn't the case. And his scenario always has been, if I don't come home, wait 3 days. And I've always told him, forget it. That's not going to happen, because if I can save you, or there's something, that I can do, I'm going to do it, So I drove around. I couldn't find anything. I went to the sheriff's office. I wasn't able to get in there. It was locked. So I went to the ER and I said, "Is there any way that you can get me connected with a deputy? I need to talk to somebody just to find out what the protocol is for this." Because I wanted something in place, because I figured they wouldn't search at night. But I also didn't want to wait that they'd end up having to go another night, because I didn't implement things. So he said it's a 12-hour process. Once they've been gone for 12 hours, then they'll start looking. And so that's what we did. I put a incident in and went home, and we had 1.5 million prayer warriors. I mean, there were people praying from the UK and Australia and everywhere, and we're really blessed that way to have such a good prayer warrior following. And so we were very thankful for that. And I really did have a comforting feeling that he was okay. And I knew while I was driving around that I was the sap, because he was sleeping somewhere under a shelter he built and had a nice fire going, and that was the case. But it was also raining. And that was the part that scared me, because it was drizzling while I was driving around, but when I was heading home, it just started dumping. I mean, it was just white rain coming down. It was raining hard. So that was a little scary to me, because hypothermia sets in really fast, and if you can't keep a fire going to keep you warm, you're in a spot. And it's been raining for a month, so the ability to find dry tinder is getting a little limited, but he's very creative, and I knew that wasn't an issue either. But just keeping it going. They also had the canoe they could put over top of them, so, and even if they were injured, I knew, they'd be able to keep themselves at least under cover, if not. And when he left in the morning, he had 2 waterproof bags full of clothing. They had long underwear on, their camo, their rain gear, and then they grabbed 2 extra outfits because it started raining in the morning. So I knew they were well cared for, and he had a survival pack, which his survival pack could keep him out there for weeks on end. So I wasn't concerned that way, but the fact that maybe my father-in-law had a heart attack, one of them broke something, that was the concern. So 8 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call from the sheriff's office, and they're wondering if we've seen any or heard anything. We were already en route to where the truck was to see if they were coming out, and didn't see them. A friend of ours went out into the woods, and of course that did upset the sheriff, and I understand why, because when you have when you have a situation where they're going to send out search and rescue, if you have too many people out there that they don't know where they are, you're running in, especially when they're not as educated as the person out there, you run into situations where you end up with other lost or dead or injured people. So it's got to be organized. But our friend has the same skills my husband did, and he was on a quad. And it ends up that he did find him. They ditched the canoe. What happened is nobody got injured. They didn't even see an elk. They, shortly after entering or getting onto the river, got into shallow water, and they had to pull the canoe. And he was pulling the canoe most of the day, and my father-in-law was hiking vertical slopes, and they were at times 20 minutes they'd go without seeing each other. And they finally, it started to get dark on them, you know, that before they hit moving water again. So they just ditched the canoe and went to high ground trying to find a cell signal. They were more worried about us, you know, than they were about themselves. They just knew we'd be worried. And our friends found them hiking on the railroad tracks, heading out. And it was a blessing because they would have had another 10, 12 miles to hike till they had gotten to town. So I was really grateful that he was out there, and so were they. And but having a protocol in place, had I not known where he was, I wouldn't have even known where to begin. Even though I didn't know the terrain, I at least still knew where to start. I knew where to look. I knew what he would do. You know, so his shelter was set up. I went out with him, and we were able to get the canoe. But it's just those scary moments. The unknown is the hardest part. And, you know, like I said, I trusted. We both have the same skill sets. I mean, he is certainly more advanced than I am, but, you know, we all practice those skills. And I just want to mention something. On our YouTube channel, we have a wilderness survival section. And, you know, people think that if you have a lighter, you can light a fire regardless, and it's no big deal, you know, so, hey, I got a lighter. Well, that's not the case. When you have wet and snowy terrain, if you do not practice lighting fires in that type of an environment, you may not get a fire lit. And there are times, I know friends of mine does backcountry rescue, and he said they found snowmobilers that were unfortunately dead, and they were trying to burn the contents of their wallet when right above them was tinder in the tree they could have used. Wow. And like my husband said, you still got, if your snowmobile breaks down, you still got fuel and oil that you could use to ignite a fire. So, but people get out there and they don't think, and these are things they don't practice. And if you don't practice, you don't remember them, and you don't know them. And that's why it's so important. Something as simple as lighting a fire, even if you're driving home and your car breaks down and you're in a remote spot, you know, outside of town or whatever, if you don't know that skill, you know, it can be a difference between life and death.
Yeah, and if you don't run some of those scenarios, you know, because you're kind of panicked anyway. What do I do? What do I do? And then if you know, if you have run some of those scenarios, it's already familiar in your mind, and so you can do, because that's something that doesn't have to happen to die when, you know, there's resources available. Well, you know, I have so many more questions for you, Miss Tammy. You have to come back. But really quick before we wrap up here, could you tell us a little bit about how you do have power out there with your solar setup? Because I'm very interested in that, and I think some of the people tuning in would be too. So could you give us a run through of that really quick?
Sure. We have a 48-volt system. It has 16 panels and 16 batteries. And a lot of people don't understand how solar works. Many times when I tell people I live off grid, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, what do you mean you're sorry? They think we don't have power all the time. But we have power all the time. We are frugal, so we really have power all the time. Other people would be using a generator more often. But let me explain how it works. Sun comes down, hits the panels. Even if it's not a sunny day, but it's bright, we're still pulling in power. And that power comes into the home, and it goes into a charge controller. The charge controller checks to make sure that the batteries don't have too much power, so it doesn't overpower them. And if they still need power, it lets the power through. Otherwise it diverts it. And once it's in the batteries, then it goes into an inverter. That battery power is DC current. What you have running in your home is AC current. So it goes through the inverter and converts it to AC power. And that is what comes in my breaker box. Just like you have the grid coming into your breaker box, I have my battery power coming into my breaker box. So I have power all the time. The difference is that when the sun goes down, we're pulling power from our batteries. So if you're not cautious, you'll end up having to run a generator a lot to recharge those batteries to keep them up. And because you don't want to get them drained, you don't want them to be low, so you have to have a generator to recharge those. We are very solar powered out here. In that when the sun is shining, that's when we do our chores. We wash, we do whatever we need to do. I mean, I can have the washing machine going, the vacuum cleaner going. My husband can have a welder going. We can do all kinds of stuff when the sun is running or sun is out. But when the sun is down, that's when we just kind of hunker down. We don't use a lot of power. We're very cautious even with lighting. But we're well set out here. A 48-volt system is kind of overkill. He does woodworking also, so we wanted to make sure that he had enough power to run all his power tools. But we have, 24-volt system would have been sufficient for us, and it's wonderful. We have been out here multiple times already where town has been out of power for 4 or 5 days, and we go in and had no clue, and they're like, yeah, we just got power back. It was out for 5 days. And we've only been out of power one time, and that's because a breaker went, and we didn't have a backup breaker. Needless to say, now we have extras. But and that was only for 3 days, and we still had power because we were using the generator. So we weren't really without, but we weren't pulling from the sun. So it's an amazing way to live. We don't have a power bill, and we have a very minimal fuel bill. So it's awesome.
Yes, it sounds awesome. Well, can you tell people where to find more about you and how they could connect with you? I know that you have a new book. I think Bill's going to put that slide up there with a link. And so if you could just tell us a little bit about that and, like I said, how to connect with you.
Absolutely. I would absolutely love to have you guys connect with me. You can find us at TrayerWilderness.com. It's TRAYER wilderness.com. You can find us on YouTube by simply going to TrayerWilderness.com/YouTube. My radio show you can find on all the archives are on our website, but you can also find it on iTunes if you'd like to listen to it at your convenience, and that you can find by going to TrayerWilderness.com/iTunes. And my book, like I said, I'm so excited. This is a labor of love. This has been in my head for 7 years, and I'm just so grateful to have it on paper now. And the ebook will be coming out in the next 2 weeks, and then the print book will be coming out later. And you can find out information on that right now. It's on our website, but once that changes, and you'll be notified if you subscribe to our newsletter. You can find the book on TrayerWilderness.com/embraceoffgrid. And I use the hashtag #embraceoffgrid. So if you want to find my materials, and I'm on Instagram. And our newsletter, you can sign up by simply going to TrayerWilderness.com/newsletter. Would love to have you guys join us. We do a lot of neat things and have a lot of neat things upcoming, and love meeting new people and sharing our inspiration.
Thank you so much for being here, Tammy.
Thank you. This has been great. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so if you guys are joining me late or in the middle of the show, I have been talking to Tammy Trayer of Tammy Wilderness, and she just released a new book. It's called How to Embrace Off-Grid Lifestyle, and you can find it at TrayerWilderness.com/embraceoffgrid. So go and check that out. Check out her YouTube channel and her website. She's got wonderful resources, and especially her podcast. That's my favorite. I want to remind you that if you are interested in living a self-reliant lifestyle, you can go to selfreliantschool.com/free. We have some free videos of how to get you started with preserving your own food and growing it. So be sure and check those out. That is my free gift to you. In the meantime, remember that being a self-reliant is not about being selfish. It's not just about you. It's about taking care of yourself so you can take care of the ones you love and help in your community. Take care until we talk again. I'm so glad you could join me today. Here's what to do next. Head over to selfreliantlife.tv to pick up the show notes for this episode and to watch replays of older episodes. To go directly to the show notes for this episode, go to selfreliantlife.tv. And then without a space, type a slash and then the number of today's episode. You can watch this show live every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, live on Facebook or the Periscope app. Don't forget to stop by selfreliantschool.com/free to get your free Self-Reliant School videos that will help you get started living a self-reliant life. Also, if you're listening to this show as a podcast and you've liked what you've heard today, please subscribe through Stitcher, iTunes, or your favorite podcast app. If you're on a mobile device, just search for the Self-Reliant Living Show. If you're on a laptop or desktop, just go to selfreliantlife.tv/iTunes. And while you're there, please leave a review. I love to hear from you. You leaving feedback makes it easier for others that are interested in living a self-reliant life to find my podcast. Take care until we talk again.